family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
I think the first person I heard say, I became an overnight success and it only took me 20 years to get here. I think the first person I heard say that was John Maxwell. It took a minute for me to really catch up, I'm slow sometimes, with exactly what he meant by it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. But it goes right in line with that idea that, I believe it was Sugar Ray Leonard who said, you're not going to be, no, as Marvelous Marvin Hagler said, you're not going to be a great success in the boxing ring if you're not willing to do the road work. That 5 a.m. run by yourself when nobody else is looking, that's called integrity. But see, it's that 20 years of the road work that leads to the overnight success. And that's what I want to talk about today on Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I can tell you it's not been 20 years for me yet, but if I look back 20 years and said, what have I done that leads to today? Actually, 2023 will be 30 years. 30 years since I got out of the Air Force, 30 years since I started what I called then New Perspective Literature. And I realized that somebody already had that name on a newsletter, and so I had to change it, and that's when our company name became Tell It Like It Is. That was in the fall of 1993 when my wife and I met. Before we were even an item, I changed my company name to Tell It Like It Is. By 2003, we incorporated that name, Tell It Like It Is, as an S-Corp. Today, Tell It Like It is under the SIC code of entertainment marketing, which means if there's a microphone involved, I'll find a way to make money with it. That might be as an MC, that might be as a DJ, that might be as a producer, where I'm the guy behind the camera, I'm not on the platform, I don't have a microphone in my hand. It might also mean supporting the people who are my coaching clients, who are taking the microphone, getting on the stage, taking the microphone and getting in front of the camera. And sometimes I fill a cyclical role in all of that, meaning I do a teaching or a training, someone becomes a coaching client of mine, I prepare them to be better communicators on the stage themselves, then I record and produce their production or their content or their classes. We walk the entire journey together. I might even, at their live event, provide the audio-visual equipment, the cameras, the lights, the sounds, the microphones. But it all comes back to the same thing. If there's a microphone involved, I'll find a way to make money. Now, there's something that I've learned in this journey, and that is that there are a lot of people who have the desire to lead from the front of the room. Generally speaking, with a microphone in their hand. They want to be in charge. They want to be the one barking the orders, telling everybody else what to do. Or at a minimum, they want to be the one at the front of the room sharing their story, telling the world about who they are and why that's important and what they've been through. And there's a real ironic twist to that it seems to me to be that the people with the greatest desire to be sharing their story with the world are those whose story has been tragic. In fact, in a lot of cases, the worse the story, the greater the burden to share it. Why is that? Why, if you've lived a terrible life, if you've been through so many bad things, if you've been victimized, abused, taken advantage of, had hard circumstances, not won every race that you participated in, why in the world would you be determined to tell the world about that? It's not entirely a rhetorical question. In fact, what I find is that the idea of sharing your story, the tragedy and the triumph, the things that you've lived through and the things that you've overcome and the ways that you've overcome them is, to use a phrase, cathartic. Meaning it's a part of the healing process. The more you talk through it, the less sharpness that pain has. The more you bury it and suppress it, the less you talk about it to yourself or out loud, in reflection or in a crowd. The less you talk about it, the more power it seems to have to come back at you later like a grass bird you've forgotten about. Oh, it'll poke you and it'll hurt and you'll notice it. The question is, how do you make that transition from, I don't want anybody to know about the pain that I've been through, it's my private pain, to, I not only want to be able to share that painful experience, but I want to be able to share that if you are experiencing that painful experience right now, I have a solution for you. I found a way not only to get out of the situation or the circumstance that brought the pain, but I found a way to recover and be better. I found a way to turn lemons into lemonades. Now, if you're the kind of person who has dozens of recipes in the closet, my mother had recipe books out the wazoo, which was really funny to me because I don't know that I ever saw that woman work from a recipe book. I mean, there were very few times she pulled out a cookbook and followed the recipe to a T. Most of what she made from what seemed like scratch to me or out of thin air. She'd open the pantry door and throw a bunch of stuff on the counter, and 20 minutes later you'd have this near gourmet meal, and you're like, how did all of this come from all of that? That doesn't make any sense to me. But what we do know is that whether it's the back of the Betty Crocker box or it's the recipe book or it's the, Instagram post where you find everybody's delectable ideas, when you follow the recipe, you tend to get a pretty consistent result. In fact, you can go to the grocery store and buy the little packet that has on the outside a picture of the Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuits. And all of the ingredients have already been measured out for you. Everything you need to make that Cheddar Bay biscuit that comes again and again and again when you're at Red Lobster, you can make in your own kitchen. Everything you need is in that package. You might have to add an egg or two. You might have to add a cup of water. But if you follow the recipe on the back of the package, you will have your own Cheddar Bay biscuits and you don't have to wait for a server to bring them to your table. That's a solution to a problem or a craving, right? Well, the question I have for those who are interested in sharing their story is, if you're telling your story, can you be concise? Can you share it in a reasonable amount of time? Does it take you 45 minutes to develop all the characters and all of the places? And how many times do you have to jump back because you forgot an important detail as you were telling the story? Have you rehearsed it? Have you identified the scenes within the long arc of your life story that are pertinent to any given audience, that you could interchange one incident or scene versus another to be more relevant to the audience in front of you, and yet still end up with Cheddar Bay biscuits? See, the challenge for a lot of people is they haven't found the way to take the incidences of their life, the story of their life, which stories, which moments in time, which learning opportunities belong together in that sequence to come out with Cheddar Bay biscuits. Of course, you could go to the grocery store and buy the flour and buy the baking soda and buy the cheese and buy the butter and buy the garlic and come home and you've got enough to make biscuits for the world. But if they're not in the right proportion, delivered at the right time, mixed in the right order, cooked to the right temperature for the right amount of time, then what you're going to get is probably not the world famous Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuits. You're going to get something entirely different. It's also true that if you have those ingredients and you know how to measure and you can follow the recipe on the back, that you can make those biscuits whether you're 2 years old, 20 years old, or 45 years old, or 145 years old. See, the solution, i.e. the proper ingredients and the proper recipe followed in the proper order, they work everywhere. Everywhere in the world. If you have an oven and you have those ingredients and you have those instructions, you have that solution. A lot of people feel like they have found a way to cope with the problems and challenges of their life, but they can't tell it in a concise manner. There's no consistency to the ingredients from one trip around the sun to the next. Every time they deal with this problem, they deal with it in a different way. Every solution they have produces a different result. So that's a problem. That's not just a problem you already had, that's another problem. And the problem with that is that you've now handed somebody a recipe book that has multiple pages to try to get to the same result, and none of the recipes are consistent. None of the solutions lead to the same conclusion. But that's what people buy. Nobody wants to buy drill bits. In fact, most people who buy drill bits don't buy drill bits because they want a hole. They want the nail that they're going to put into the wall to hold up the picture frame of their loved ones. Now, they didn't want the drill bit. They didn't want the nail. They didn't want the hole in the wall. What they wanted was to see the picture of their loved ones. See, that's the solution. That's the end game. That's why I do what I do, is to get to that big picture, to that end game. And that's a big deal. Your next question is, if you can tell the story and you do have a recipe or a methodology or a process that hasn't just consistently delivered the solution for you, but is transferable, that same method, that same process, those same ideas all wrapped together, when handed off to somebody else, they could reproduce the same solutions that you got if they have the same problem that you had. At that point, you know that your method and your solution is palatable and productive. But if the story that leads them to employ your solution doesn't engage them, doesn't connect with them, well, the story's just not quite ready yet. Does it mean you don't have a story? No, of course you have a story. Does it mean that you're not worthy of delivering your story? No. You're absolutely worthy of delivering your story. It's your story, right? You lived through it. You learned it. You should tell it. The world needs to hear it. The question is, have you prepared yourself the 20 years of road work in the dark to get ready for that 5 minutes of fame? Have you prepared yourself to provide a solution that may save someone's life, save their relationship, save their career? If you have solutions like that, the world needs to know that. The world needs to employ those solutions. But if your carrier vehicle of those solutions is a story that makes no sense to people, a story that cannot relate to people, a story that cannot connect with people, then when they tell that story, they're like, that's not me, I was never there. That's not me, I'm not part of that. That's not me, I don't get it. I don't have those kind of credentials. Obviously, I can't accomplish the same thing. Well, then all of a sudden your solution, as powerful as it may be, as consistent as your solution may be, if it cannot connect through its story form with other people's lives, then chances are you're not going to make a difference in anybody's life. Let me also say, though, that one of the other challenges is that we all have a reason, a motive, a direction. Let me call it a narrative for where we want to go with the course of our story. See, we wouldn't offer a solution to somebody else unless we felt like that solution not only made our lives better, but would also make their lives better as well. Now, that conclusion presupposes that my solution is as good for you as it was for me. That if you do what I did and you get what I got, that will be an end result that you're ecstatic with. In fact, part of our marketing concept in our stories and our solutions and our, whether they're online courses or their books or their teachings or their coachings, the end result of the relationship we engage in should be that your life is at a better place than it was when we started. That's the underlying presumption. Here's the other underlying presumption, and that is that what I see as an improvement, what I believe to be better, you want. Which means I've got to start first by asking, what do you want? If the best recipe I make is Cheddar Bay biscuits and you're lactose intolerant, probably not a good mix. If the best recipe I make is Cheddar Bay biscuits and you are gluten intolerant, probably not a good mix. That doesn't mean that my Cheddar Bay biscuits aren't any good. It also doesn't mean that I should stop making Cheddar Bay biscuits because these two people, the lactose intolerant and the gluten intolerant, they can't be my customers. What it does mean, though, is that I, as a responsible human in life, should refer them to someone who makes biscuits of similar nature without the cheese or without the gluten. Now, we often, as selfish individuals, we want to sell our product to everyone. What we produce, whether it's widgets or wigs, is for everyone. If you have a head, you can wear a wig. Well, there's truth to that, but that doesn't mean you want one. Doesn't mean you don't need one. But it might mean you don't want one. Well, then you're not my customer, and that's fine. But if wigs are the only thing I need that I make, if wigs are the only thing I make, what I need to do is find the people who want wigs and tell them the story of my wigs. If I want to sell Cheddar Bay biscuits, I need to find people who are not intolerant to lactose or gluten and sell them my Cheddar Bay biscuits. And the better the story of why I make these, the more likely they are to sell to the people who want what I have. See, that's another challenge that I find with a lot of people in the world of storytelling is that they don't know who cares about their story. They don't know how to connect. They don't know what the end game narrative is. But surely they know that there are solutions, there are instances, there are problems, there are incidences through the course of their story, their life, that are teachable moments and they would be valuable to someone, but they're not sure who that someone is or what that conclusion is, or in the end game, how will your life be better? When I say story power is the power to lead the narrative, what I mean is that the narrative is that agenda, that direction that I believe you will be better if you follow the story, if you follow the recipe, if you like Cheddar Bay biscuits, if you're not lactose intolerant, if you're not gluten intolerant, then this recipe will lead you to the best Cheddar Bay biscuits you've ever made in your kitchen, ever. That's my guarantee. Well, if that's your guarantee, your only presumption is that you have a solution to a problem they have, and that is a craving for Cheddar Bay biscuits, and you've taken into effect whether or not they're intolerant to the ingredients. Now, if you've cleared all those obstacles, now you've just got to be able to prove that you've got a solution that works for them in an affordable way, and it will solve the problem they have. So many times I encounter people who don't even ask, do you like biscuits? They are so determined to sell the world their recipe, they couldn't care less if what people are really craving is motor oil. They just want to sell Cheddar Bay biscuits. I want to have the right campaign. I want to have the right funnel. I want to have the right sales process. I want to have the right online ordering system. I want to have the right online course because I want the world to have my biscuits. And if the world wants motor oil, too bad, they're getting biscuits. My friends, if that's where your story is, if you have a story of overcoming the worst tragedies in the world and you're now living a victorious life and everybody in the world is celebrating along with you, but they don't have the problem you had or don't need the solution you offer, it's time to go back to the drawing board and ask, what else did I learn that will serve those that I care about? That, my friends, is how your story qualifies to lead the narrative. Now, if you're curious, I'm going to put a QR code up on the screen in just a moment that you can actually click on that screen and take a quiz online. It's free. It'll ask you 15 or 20 questions about your story to decide whether or not your story is ready to lead the narrative. I hope it helps you. I hope it does. And I hope it helps you to see that your story can change the world when it's ready. Oh, by the way, it might take 20 years to become an overnight success. Don't waste that 20 years doing something else. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. And oh yeah, for what it's worth, I am craving Cheddar Bay biscuits now.